Hi, my name is Eliyahu Hashel. I'm a barber in the Park Barbershop in Bet Shemesh. And unfortunately now, because of the war with the coronavirus, all the barbershops have been shut down, and I know that's very difficult for a lot of people. I've decided to refrain myself from getting haircuts until I can open the barbershop back again, as an act of solidarity with my customers. Nonetheless, I've decided to make this video with tips on how to give haircuts at home. This is basically a dub of a Hebrew version I made, and I apologize it's coming out so late, but I hope it will at least be help for some people before Pesach.
If all you're looking to do is give a bit of a tidy up around the ears where it's getting messy, but you don't need a full haircut, all you have to do is brush the hair down a little bit, and then scoop it up with the comb. This will be your guide, and you just snip across the length of what's sticking out of the comb, and this should just neaten up the edge of the hairline so it won't be scruffy over the ears. The main part of this video is going to show the process of giving a basic haircut with clippers or a haircut machine, and we'll be pointing out the various stages, giving tips on things to take into account, and describing how to neaten or work around the payas depending on the various customs which I commonly encounter. What we're going to need for the job is a haircutting machine and the plastic attachment, the comb guides, a comb, the more rigid the better, and a pair of scissors. Most scissors that you'll find around the house are not ideal for cutting hair, but under the circumstances we'll make do with whatever we have. On that note, even if you don't have a machine, you can still give a basic haircut with scissors. It's a little bit more tricky and it might not be as neat, but we'll give a description of the basic technique at the end of the video if you really need to get rid of that mop. When giving a haircut to kids, we should bear in mind that they don't always have the patience to sit for a long time, especially when we're prodding and pushing their head around and coming at them with scissors. Here are a few tips to make it a little easier. First of all, stay calm. This will help your child feel like everything that's happening is normal and prevent them from getting worked up from us being in a fluster. You can also tell them that if they sit nicely, they'll get some kind of prize or treat at the end of the haircut, and gently remind them about it whenever you see they need some motivation to sit still. For very small children, you could have a handful of small sweets and every once in a while just pop one into their mouth. It's also a good idea to let them know at every stage of the haircut what we're about to do so they don't get a shock when they hear the buzzing or get spritzed with water. Now let's think about where we're going to do the haircut. Choose a place with a smooth floor so you can sweep up easily afterwards, and set them up on a chair without padding so you don't get hairs stuck in it. Make sure you're standing at an angle where the light will help you see what you're doing. Okay, here we go. I recommend using a comb in conjunction with the clippers. Brushing out the hair in between buzzes helps get rid of the hair that's already been cut and keeps the hair lying flat in its natural position. If you're doing a buzz cut or a Hasidic cut, which doesn't involve any fringe or bangs, then ideally you start from the place of the tefillin in the front of the head. Using the comb, pick up the front hairline so you have a good angle of attack, and gently scoop with the machine against the grain of the hair. If you are planning on leaving bangs or a fringe, then start at the back so you can leave room to cut the bangs in proportion with the rest of the hair. Once again, we're going to scoop against the grain of the hair, and in between scoops we'll brush the hair back into position while simultaneously clearing out the hair that's already been cut so it doesn't get in the way of the machine and lets us see what we're doing. We'll go over each area a few times until we get a smooth and uniform cut. Now I'd like to explain about the area of the payas. According to halacha, the area considered to be the payas starts at the corner where the front hairline, which grows towards the forehead, meets the hair which starts growing down towards the side. From this point we draw a line which extends to the top part of the circle above the ear. From this line down, we must not shave the hair completely, whereas above it we can shave freely as much as we want. Going downwards, the area of the payas extends at least until under the ear hole, and according to some opinions, even lower than that. The requirement within this area is that each hair should be left with minimum 3 mm length, which corresponds to a number 1 guard on most machines, though it's preferable to leave at least 5 mm corresponding to a number 2 guard, since many opinions hold that way. It's a good idea to check the box or the manual of your clippers to see how the numbering system works, because some home devices differ from the standard. It's also important to note that even when cutting with scissors, we need to be careful to leave the required length within the area of the payas. Some people have a custom to leave more length in the payas. My son doesn't have a long payas, but we'll try to show how to tidy up the area around it. For Hasidic payas, which start from the top, Usually it covers this area, more or less. All this area stays uncut, and we trim the rest with the machine. So what we're going to do is, first of all, brush the payas a little bit down, and then we're going to hold the area of the payas and use the comb to gently brush the hairs above the payas, so that all the short hairs which aren't part of the payas will come out, and we'll be able to trim them, and whatever's long will stay down. Then we'll scoop the hairs that we separated out, carefully trimming with the machine, thereby not damaging the payas. In the back, we'll use a similar technique where we'll brush the hair forward with the comb, and we'll see whatever is too short to be combed together with the rest of the payas will be what we're going to cut. We'll go up with the clippers, trimming up, until we get a clean perimeter around the payas. The Litvish or Yeshivish style of payas usually leaves a little bit less of a perimeter. These type of payas will usually be brushed back behind the ears and trimmed at the length of the end of the ear. So firstly, before we start giving the haircut, it's a good idea to brush out the payas so we don't accidentally cut them when we're clipping the back. Just use the comb to catch all the hairs and bring them forward so that they're out of the way. Here we can use the same technique as before by catching the long hair and brushing out the short hairs and clipping above. Or we can draw a line with the comb carefully in a straight line according to how high we want it to be, how thick we want the payas to be, lifting up with the comb and then clipping whatever we've lifted up, leaving what's underneath and trimming what's on top. Using a comb to make the line which will form the perimeter of the payas is recommended, so we get a straight line, whereas if we would just dig in with the machine, we might not be able to make as smooth of a perimeter. It wouldn't look as neat because some clumps would be left, different patches would be different heights, and it wouldn't give us our desired cleanliness. We can either make the line directly in line with the top of the ear, and the higher up we style this line, the thicker the payas will be because they'll have more hairs being brushed back. For the back corner, we'll once again use the comb to pull out the long hairs and trim out any short hairs that are sticking out. If you don't need to leave any length on the payas, you just want to trim them and tidy them up, use the machine on a high enough setting, of course as we've said no less than 1 or 2, and simply scoop up just like the rest of the hair, go up over the payas, and that will tidy it up and trim it enough. If you want to leave a bit more length than that, then you can just comb out the payas and then snip in a straight line using the comb as a guide once again. This will thin out the payas on one hand so you don't have too much thickness on the sideburns, but still have a bit more length coming down in front of the ears to make it more noticeable. Now we can very carefully come with the scissors and trim just the edges of the hair which is sticking out. Remember that the front area just above the front of the ear is part of the payas, so we need to be very careful not to trim it too short, too close to the skin. So all we're trying to do here is just to tidy up the edge of the line, just to cut the edges of the hair which are sticking out, and that should give us a neat result. Getting back to the rest of the hair, we're going over each area a few times, as we said, to get an even cut. There's one area which needs special attention. In the back of the head there's usually a circle where the hair splits out into all different directions. We should pay special attention over here to scoop up against the grain, as we said, but because it goes in all directions we're going to have to go over this a few times from each direction and come and make sure that we get all the hair trimmed to the right size. It's a good idea to even use a shorter comb guide for this area, just right at the edge of the circle, because sometimes because of the angle it can stick out a little bit. So if we go over with a shorter number, we can get a cleaner result. The other side of the payas is the same as the first side, and also on the top we can go over against the grain once again, scooping up the hair and cutting it over a few times to make sure we get the neat cut. At this point we can take off the comb guard from the clippers, and we're going to use the bare blades of the clippers carefully to line up the back of the hair neatly. It's a good idea to gently place your hand on the head to steady it and to anticipate any movement. We're going to flip over the clippers so the blade side points towards the skin. And what we're trying to do here is to imagine a neat perimeter of the hairline and to remove any excess overhang which gets in the way of the back having a nice trimmed shape. Make sure not to go too deep into the hairline because that ends up looking unnatural. Place the machine on your imaginary line carefully and just move it away from the hairline to clean the nape of the neck. Repeat this process to straighten the line and go a little bit up. You can fold the ear gently, it shouldn't hurt. Here too we have to be very careful, because if we go over the top of the ear, we're actually shaving the pierce. So just be aware of how high you really need to go. Repeat the same thing on the other side. Make sure it's symmetrical, and then we can join the both sides with a line on the bottom to complete the hairline. Here too, just focus on joining up as low as possible and not to go up too much into the hairline, because that could lead to an unnatural look of bald spots. By now we've done most of the head. If you're making very short bangs, so you can use the clipper for most of the top as well. But if you want a little bit of a longer bangs, then I would recommend to only use the clippers for the back half of the top of the head, so that we can have some leeway when we're trying to connect the long hair in the fringe to the buzzed hair in the back. Now we want to wet the hair in the front, the long hair that we're going to be cutting with scissors. This helps the hair be more malleable and also not spread all over the person's face when we're doing the haircut. If you don't have a spritzer, you can just take a little bit of water in your hand and sprinkle it on the hair, rub it in so that it gets into the hair nicely. Now with the comb, we're going to lift up the front hairline, the fringe in front, and we'll pull it up and hold it between our fingers. Pull your fingers a little bit away from the scalp, higher up, so that you can leave some space for the fringe, and then you should have a straight line of hair where you can cut with the scissors over that straight line, using it as a guide. Then we're going to comb again in the same way, but this time we're going to pick up a group of hair which is a little bit further back. Our aim is to cut it to a similar length but a tiny bit shorter, so that we can gradually get towards the length which is in the back. We keep repeating this process, each time going a little bit further back with the area that we're cutting and a little bit shorter. In between, we're going to also brush the hair forward so that we can make sure that we're not missing any clumps, and that will help us see that everything is coming out smooth. Once we've done the middle line of the hair, we can go to one side. I'll go to the right side over here and repeat the same process using the middle lengths as a guide to try and keep it all even. Here too, we'll take consecutive groups of hair from the front and trim them to taper the fringe towards the back. And now we're going to go and do the same thing on the other side. It's a good idea again to keep brushing forward to make sure we haven't missed anything, there's no clumps left that need to be cut. And once we've done the whole top, we're going to go and connect the top to the sides. We're going to do this in a similar technique to what we've just been doing, but here our focus is to pick up the area of hair which lies between the sides which we buzzed and the top that we just cut with scissors. And when we pick it up with the comb and hold it between our fingers, we should be able to find an angle to cut it in a way that will connect those two areas. We repeat this for both sides of the head and also in the back somewhat if we need to. Now we're going to trim the fringe, the bangs. You can wet the hair again if you need to, and we're going to brush it down, and we're going to try and cut it from side to side carefully to try and keep a straight line. Here also we have to notice very carefully the top corners of the fringe could well be part of the payas. What we can do when we're coming to trim this area is to lift our scissors a little bit off the scalp. Just bring them to the right position, lift it a bit up, and then you can make your trim without having to worry about cutting the payas inadvertently too short. If your bang is brushed to the side, just quickly brush it, make sure everything looks neat. If not, you can brush it back down and see what needs straightening or trimming more than the rest. And now we just clean up over the face and hair around the ears. Giving a haircut with scissors and a comb will just get hold of what we have at home. And our objective here is to trim all the hair, that it should be more or less even, that we won't have longer clumps of hair and shorter pieces of hair. So we're going to start from the front of the hair. We pick up the front hairline with our comb, and then we hold it with our fingers so we can have a straight line. And then you trim above your finger, and then we're going to take the next group of hair behind it and pick it up with the comb, hold it between our fingers, more or less the same height as we've done before, and then trim over our fingers. And then we continue going over the whole head in a similar fashion. A good thing to remember here is that we can use our fingers as a guide to the height that we're cutting the hair. So for example, if we lay our finger flat on the scalp, then we know that the length we're cutting is one finger's worth. If we pull it up a bit higher, then we try and remember more or less how high we pulled it up, and we try and keep all the other cuts in a similar length. So we're going to continue going over all the areas of the head, every so often brushing the hair back to its natural position so we can see how it lays It's most efficient if we focus on one area at a time, because that way we can go over the head systematically and make sure we didn't forget any areas. However, it's still a good idea to go over again once we finish the whole head, just to make sure that we didn't leave anything behind. And if we do see something that's too long, we can just lift that area up and even it out to the hairs around it. At the edge of the hairline, we want to make sure that we don't have unnecessary overhang, so it's important to get a little bit closer as you reach the edge. Then it's just a matter of trimming the line, making sure there's nothing that's sticking out and making it look neat at the edge. Good luck and happy snipping. One more general but important tip is that you can always cut hair shorter, but you can't make it longer. So at first, err on the side of longer rather than shorter. I would recommend that even if you're going for a very short haircut, start with a minimum of number 3, 9mm, or number 4, 12mm, so that we don't end up taking off more than we expected.
What I've covered here is very basic, and I haven't spoken about every possible situation. So if you have any questions or you need any clarification, I invite you to give me a call. I want to thank my sweet kids who helped me make the videos, Michal, Tzipora, Eitan, Simcha, and Betzalel. I wish you all the best, happy Pesach, and may we hear good news from all Jews. Chag.
Eitan, זה video.